guide of the Mono Lake Committee, and if you've been watching these Mono Lake Moments, you might know who I am. And again, we want to thank you for joining us here by the lake, but also by staying at home, and also for all the support that we're getting to keep doing the work that we do to protect Mono Lake. And today we're going to talk about the lake level, which is really important to what we do, and I'll tell you all about why. But I want to tell you a little bit why I'm here instead of up against the lake. So it's very windy, and I got down here and it was just too windy to make a video looking out at the lake. I was even going to get in some waders and go out and show you the lake level gauge, but sometimes Mono Lake has its own ideas, and so I am tucked down behind a tufa in the sagebrush, or in the rabbit brush, and I'll talk for 5 to 10 minutes about lake level, and then I'll pan a little bit to show you what the lake looks like. You can kind of see the clouds around me. It's a beautiful warm day. It's about 55 degrees, and this breeze is nice. A little chilled, but it's not. It's really showing us that spring is here. So the first thing I want to say is Happy New Year! You might be thinking, what is she talking about? New Year was in January, but I'm talking about a happy new water year. So we measure the amount of runoff that comes off the mountains from April 1st to March 31st. And it makes it so we can measure the snow that is captured in the mountains. So on January 1st, most of the snowpack is in the mountains in the form of snow, and it doesn't start to come down into the basins until it starts to melt when it gets warmer. So that's why we've shifted our year over to April 1st. So the lake level, we measure the lake level at the Mono Lake Committee. We measure the lake level on the 1st of every month, just to keep tabs on how it's rising and falling throughout the years, or throughout the months, based on snowmelt, based on maybe a local rain event that happened. Typically the lake doesn't change by rainfall, but if it's really heavy in the spring, it may change a little bit. Or to just monitor the evaporation that's happening during the summer. So we take those measurements off of a gauge that's actually in the lake right now. So as the lake rises and falls, you can look at the gauge and measure how many tenths of a foot it has increased or decreased. And April 1st is a special time because it's the beginning of that water year. So the Mono Lake Committee gets together with DWP and reads the lake level together. But this year, since everything is so different, the Mono Lake Committee read the gauge by themselves, and then DWP did a separate reading on the same day. And luckily those readings matched up, and so as of April 1st, the lake level is 6,382.6 feet above sea level. So we talk about the lake level as relation to sea level because it's easier to have just a standard number, and we can't count on measurements of the lake depth. So the lake is on average 50 to 60 feet deep, but there are some spots in the lake, like just east of Paoha Island, that are about 150 feet deep. But the majority of the lake is shallow around the edges, so it's just easier to talk about it in feet above sea level, and it gives us a great way to compare past years and talk about it in what's easier for us. Sometimes it's a little hard to explain to visitors. They're like, wait, what are you talking about? It's that deep? It's not that deep, but feet above sea level. So the sea level is, or the lake level, excuse me, I'm talking about the ocean. The lake level is important because it determines how much water the Department of Power, so Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, or DWP, it determines how much water they can export in a given water year. And part of the decision to raise the level of Mono Lake also involved different tiers of exports down to LA. So right now, at 6,382.6 feet above sea level, Los Angeles will be allowed to take 16,000 acre feet of water coming down from the mountains before it reaches Mono Lake, putting it into the aqueduct and taking it down to Los Angeles in this coming year. 16,000 acre feet. So 1 acre foot is, if you imagine a football field filled 1 foot deep with water. That amount of water is an acre foot, and it equals about 326,000 gallons, which is enough for 2 average families for a year's worth of water use. So 16,000 acre feet is over 5 billion gallons of water that comes down from the mountains and goes into the aqueduct rather than into the lake. Now, if the lake drops below 6,380 feet, when we read the lake level gauge on April 1st, then the exports that DWP are allowed decreases to 4,500 acre feet. And if the lake level drops or is forecasted to drop below 6,377 feet, then Los Angeles is barred from taking exports that year. And so we have a lot of modeling systems that help us figure out, based on the snowpack in the mountains that spring, how much water we are expecting to run off into the Mono Basin. So if it's a dry year, like this year, and the lake is forecasted to drop because there's less water coming in through the runoff than there is evaporating in the summer daily, then the lake level will drop. And if it's forecasted to drop below a certain tier, it will change what DWP can do, especially if it is forecasted to drop below 6377. So luckily in the last few years we've had some really wet winters, and 2 summers ago the lake rose about 4 vertical feet, and last summer it rose about 1.5 feet. So with this winter we've been having a pretty dry winter, as you know. So on April 1st there are also a lot of snowpack surveys, and our most recent numbers that came out just a few days ago, they're still preliminary, but they have averaged the Sierra snowpack to be about 50% of average, which is pretty low. So putting that number into our forecast for the next year for Mono Lake's level, it's just the preliminary numbers say that the lake is going to drop about 1 foot. So water will be evaporating from the surface of the lake this summer faster than water is being replenished through those freshwater streams that flow into the lake from the melting snow. So the lake is going to drop, but not that much. It'll kind of equal down to what we had before last year, and then we're kind of hoping for some snowy winters in the future that can raise the level of the lake higher. So our goal, working with Los Angeles, is to continue to monitor this lake level rise and fall as it happens with drought years and with wet years, so that once we get higher, the lake's target level is 6,392 feet above sea level. So once it gets to 6,391, it triggers a kind of post-transition phase where we'll work with DWP and the State Water Board to figure out the next steps to make sure that the lake stays at relatively 6,392 foot management level. So there are a couple of exciting things happening right now, and I'm really sad that you can't see it, but I will pan over. We have about 8 or 9 ear grebes floating around Sorry for the jerkiness there. Let's see, I think I can zoom in. See, there's a couple of little eared grebes. Right now, there are probably 4 or 5 males and a few females. And the males have this bright gold face feathers and a bright red eye. It's moving off to the right. Little eared grebes. You can see Pa'oha in the background. So these are eared grebes, and this is a bird that only swims in the water, and they eat brine shrimp and alkali flies. They can fly, but they cannot walk on land because they're so well adapted. They're so tiny, they're pretty hard to see in this screen. Let's see if I can make it smaller there. And so in the fall, 1 to 2 million eared grebes come to Mono Lake to fuel up for their migration further south for the winter. Mono Lake is a hugely important source of food for these birds. So it's always exciting to see them in the spring. They typically hang out year-round in small numbers, but it's really in the fall, September, October, that we see them in huge numbers at Mono Lake. But you can really see how these waves are just crashing on the shore, and you can see some foam build up. So Mono Lake is a chemically very interesting lake, and it has things like borates and sulfates and chlorides, and when it gets really windy and the lake gets kind of whipped up, it actually forms a soap-like foam. And so after windy days, we see a lot of foam on the shores of Mono Lake. You can see Pa'oha Island in the background as well, so the big white island. And it's a relatively young island, about 300 years old, and it's lake bottom sediment that's been pushed up above the lake level by magma moving down below, pushing up. And then when I pan a little bit to the left, you can see that little black island, that's Nedjit, and it is also a volcano, and is really amazing. It's about 1,600 years old. There are a couple of different andesitic eruptions that formed Nedjit. You can see the Bodhi Hills in the background and the Anchorite Mountains, and these beautiful clouds today. It's pretty amazing. The tufa that you see in the foreground is actually a big pumice boulder that erupted potentially when Nedjit was erupting. Big gas-filled boulder that actually floats, and it floated towards this area of the lake and then was submerged, and so it was covered with a fine crust of tufa about 1 inch thick. And so as it's eroding, you can kind of see some of the pumice coming out from underneath. So the gray is pumice, and it's basically, if you know the rock obsidian that we have a lot of out here, it's just obsidian that's filled with volcanic gases and now covered with tufa. Pretty amazing. So that's our moment for today. Happy New Year! And if you have any questions about the lake level, you can put them in the comments, and we'll do our best to answer them here on this Facebook video. I hope you all have a lovely day.